Welcome to Lyme Time. I'm Allie from the Tick Chicks. We are all more than Lyme disease and chronic illness, and together we stand with you to overcome and rise. I'll bring you closer to the experts in cutting-edge treatments and even a few unexpected ways of healing. I'll ask the questions you want answers to regarding Lyme disease and successful ways of getting you closer to 100%. We are in this together and will not be defined by Lyme. Luke Kohen is a rising voice of inspiration and leadership on our planet as a speaker, artist, poet, and ecopreneur. He carries a unique, multidisciplinary wisdom in service to an emerging culture on the planet, which informs all the content he creates. With over a decade of experience empowering individuals and groups, he also serves as a mentor for emerging leaders, founders, and change agents. Deeply passionate about bridging the gap between social entrepreneurship and environmental activism, he's been a strategist for forging new models of collaboration and innovation where the meeting of universal spirituality, holistic business, whole systems change, and community building all converge. Since 2008, Luke has been supporting, consulting, and co-creating with movements, communities, organizations, and leaders committed to the formation of leading-edge eco-villages, educational institutes, and innovative solutions to solve our world's greatest challenges. We welcome with an open heart today our guest, Luke Kohen, and we are going to talk a little bit about his life, how he got here, all the things he's doing, and most importantly, quantum healing. Welcome, Luke.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Sending love from Bali.
So let's talk about who you are as a person and how you got to where you are. Or actually, I'd like to talk about how you got to the point where you were set on this path.
Yeah. I mean, so my kind of origin story of what got me on a hero's journey or spiritual path, very deeply involved in the healing arts. So I had a full body breakdown, a full healing crisis in my last year of university, and I was a very agile, highly competitive martial artist and basketball player and runner, and that was my healthy outlet. Because I also struggled with substance abuse and, a lot of the typical culture that is focused on, there's sort of a collective enabling of self-destructive patterns, and especially in like a college scene. And so I was coping with some big grief from 9/11 and, was pushing my body really hard because I always had this split between the part of me that wanted to really better myself and be healthy, essentially, wholesome, and the part of me that was self-destructive. And so that dichotomy played out and was kind of amplified through that experience. And so, I basically went from playing 10 full court games of basketball and like sparring and grappling and going out boozing and doing other stupid things. My body just kind of gave out. And so it was a pretty big crisis around my identity as well, because, I was a 22-year-old athlete who got his healthy outlet through movement and flow states of being in the pocket or the zone, if you will, in terms of, that lingo, where I would get a break from my mind or get a break from my issues. And so I got pretty depressed. I was walking with a cane, and I went from that agile young man to basically walking with a cane pretty much overnight. And so during that time, I had to start to let go and come to terms with where my circumstance was at, and try to find out what was going on with me. And so I went to physical therapists, I went to acupuncturists, I did all these tests, and no one could tell me anything. No one could be like, yeah, you're probably going to need a hip replacement when you're 30, or yeah, we don't know what's wrong with you. Good luck. And it was kind of like, wow, that's discouraging. And one day I was sitting with all of this information and coming to terms with it, and I had bought this little cast iron teapot for myself for my birthday. It's like I think I got like a gift card for TJ Maxx or something, and I was like, I like came across like, what is this doing at TJ Maxx? This is epic. I want this. I feel attracted to this for some reason. And I was drinking out of this cast iron teapot and sitting with a cup of tea, and I spontaneously dropped into a very deep state of meditation. And in that stillness, what I call the living stillness of the universe, I sort of remembered who I was, and I accessed that living stillness through sitting for the first time. It always come in taste and like slivers through movement, but this was like a whole other level. And in that peak state of, sort of peak spiritual experience, I had this memory of being like a Taoist hermit in some other life, and being in a cave, and visceral, and this very timeless experience. There was no sense of time. And I came out of it like, whoa, whatever that feeling is and just was, I need to dedicate my life to this feeling. This is it. This is what I've been looking for my entire life. And
so with that transition for you, what did it look like at first?
Oh, it was really tricky at first because I didn't have any context for what was happening. I had read some spiritual books, on and off throughout my years, and had a few other kind of peak experiences. But what happened was I got gifted a copy of Autobiography of a Yogi, and I read that book, and it was like the second wave of remembrance, or there was a transmission in that book that jolted me even more into my desire to seek out the nature of reality, or how things actually work at a deeper felt sense beyond just my mind or the conditioning of my life up to that point. And so very, very quickly within the coming 2 weeks, I basically committed full-heartedly to my own soul, and it was like my soul and where I was merged, and I could see where my soul had been in the background behind my personality and my challenges my whole life up until that point. And so when we merged, it was like all these things had to get stripped away, all these things that I was previously involved in. So the reading that book and some of the yogic lifestyle at the time, I'm not practicing that same lifestyle to the degree that I do now, just because it's not required. But at the time, I gave up eating meat, smoking cannabis, drinking alcohol, watching TV, and I basically started to disaffiliate from my fraternity that I was the vice president of at the time. And I would like go to this other college town to try to find monks or like spiritual bookstores to have some kind of conversations around this. And I didn't know anyone who was living that way, or knew what yoga was, and so I was just thirsty. I was just like, I need knowledge. I need information. Like something's been stoked. This fire's been reawakened inside me. I need to stoke this flame. And so that initial like leaving a very dense, typical college, lifestyle to go like head over heels, fully commit that's who I am. I'm a very all or nothing person, like just completely one-pointed focus onto a yogic spiritual path was how it all started. And that was 14 years ago.
And then once you started on that, and assuming you practiced a lot of yoga, and then
that was the only thing that gave me relief in the beginning, and it gave me a sense of personal power again, and I started to take charge of my body. And so not only did I start to have other breakthroughs and insights, and more peak spiritual experiences spontaneously started to come to me, it opened a door for synchronicity and for life to start to guide me to the next pieces. And I met a spiritual teacher where I grew up, actually, shortly after that. And then my girlfriend at the time actually made the leap with me out of the lifestyle as well. So we went from boozing and clubbing to cooking quinoa and doing asana. So it was kind of cool that I had a companion that was willing to transition out of the modern culture with me. And then as soon as I graduated, I went right to India. I basically waited tables for a summer, did my yoga every day, started to train with this teacher, and then I went right to India in 2007, did my yoga teacher training. And then basically from that point on, it's been one door after the next, meeting another lineage of myself. Meeting my bioenergetics mentor that I apprenticed with for a decade, and core energetics therapy, and just one door would lead to the next. And so I've had a real honor and privilege to have studied with lineage keepers of indigenous wisdom, of really unique, powerful master level healers in my journey. I mean, there's a movie's worth of wild experiences that like I couldn't even share or try to even begin to articulate in a space like this, that were phenomenal. And all these years later, it's very much been about coming back into integration and coming out of the very mystical and very much into the practical, and translating a lot of these experiences into ways that people can digest them or be invited into having more of that in their life, and how those systems of these ancient wisdom technology, and I call them technologies because they're true technologies of the soul, of the spirit, of the living nature that we are, needs to inform some of how we are going to resolve the crisis that we're in.
Yeah, there are quite a few situations going on. I'm sure your life has been very busy because of that alone. Let's talk a little bit about quantum healing. So a lot of our listeners are dealing with something called chronic illness. And, I'd first love to hear your interpretation of what you envision chronic illness is in sort of a metaphysical way. And, a lot of our people have been dismissed from the medical community, kind of along the lines of what you went through as a young person. You're just sort of like, keep going and going and going, and nobody's getting to the root of them. And many of them are without resources to heal, but they're finding their way, So let's just talk a little bit about that and sort of put it into layman's terms for us and give us a little bit of an introduction.
Yeah, I mean, so like what I first want to say is I want to send my empathy to everyone who's really struggling, because I know what that's like for my own experience. I had my version of that, and it was very much in my life early on. My mother got diagnosed with the worst case of Lyme's that you can get when I was 7.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so she's been battling that my whole life, and I was witness to that early on. Now, for me, chronic illness and the systemic challenge of it that a lot of people have because of our modern medical system and the worldview or the orientation within that, it doesn't address the whole person or the holistic nature. Modern medicine addresses just the symptomology, and so when it comes to chronic illness, there is a holistic aspect. There's multi layers of why there's a physical manifestation of like that happening, and there's many factors that go into that, from a person's individual emotional challenges from childhood and where that's manifested, to exposure to heavy metals and chemicals, petrochemicals, too much sugar consumption. I mean, there's a list that we could go through that I believe are some of the major contributors to chronic illness. And over the 14 years of healing myself from chronic fatigue, from Epstein-Barr, from, a lot of the things that plague people, I've gone through that journey of actually resolving these issues. And I'll say that there is the spiritual component that needs to be included. And I believe that anyone on a journey to healing themselves, if they have the context and the understanding that they are in a spiritual initiation, it will make the journey a lot more fulfilling and less burdensome and discouraging and devastating, because there's more context for what part of us actually needs to come online within our being in order to resolve these physical manifestations of dis-ease.
So and
that's where it goes into quantum healing. That's where the quantum aspect needs to be included.
Absolutely. And is somebody like your mother who's still struggling with Lyme disease, does she buy into this and
she gets it to the capacity that she can within her worldview. She's from a whole previous generation that, I think she's a bit more fixed in some of her, mindsets and philosophies on and her particular religion, but she is, compared to the average person, she'll meditate and do visualization exercises, and she researches supplements, and she's definitely been trying to heal herself, but there's a fundamental construct that she hasn't broken through yet, which is why it hasn't fully resolved, plus the unwillingness to change her diet because of the comfort that food brings her is part of why I think she's still, in struggle with it, and that it's not resolved. It's not, or not, I know 3 different friends that have cured Lyme's through diet alone. Um,
Diet is
so it's,
such a huge part of it. But as you say, again, any one of us could have the perfect diet and yet not
yeah,
do the emotional work that it takes. So wouldn't it be qualified as sort of just a melding of those two, the spiritual, the emotional, and the physical body all coming together at the same time and being on the
yeah,
same plane at the same time? I mean, that's really hard to do, but if you can get
yeah,
and and really change it for your own good, change your entire lifestyle. I think that's
yeah.
probably what we're talking about when we talk about quantum healing.
Lifestyle is a massive part of it. Um, we're raised in a culture that doesn't support a lifestyle that's integrated towards thrivability. There's no, it's a broken system. And so, this is an important thing to realize, that a lot of people, they get discouraged, and they have a lot of negative reaffirmation that can feel like the walls are closing in, because that whole worldview of the modern culture doesn't address the whole being. And these, very often, people with chronic illness have a predisposition to a type of hypersensitivity in their nervous system, or empathy, higher levels of empathy. uh, there's a unique challenge for sensitive souls of being in this world, because it's set up for it's a bit dense. It's not actually set up for sensitive people. And so there's a lot of negative affirmation that comes as a feedback loop from life when you're facing chronic illness, to sort of blame, shame, or to, a lot of people I talk to feel heavily misunderstood. And there's also a loop of victimization that happens, because that's that feedback they're still receiving is, oh, there's something wrong with you specifically, and people already feel like there's something wrong with them, so they don't need that emotional kind of shaming on top of it. But
Layer,
the
yeah.
thing the thing that they need to know is that the world was not set up for them to thrive. The world was not set up. The world that they were born into was not here to serve their thrivability from the start. And so if we can come to terms with that at a deeper level, and the constructs that we have to dismantle in order to shift our worldview enough to become empowered enough to go on that journey in a way that we are dismantling and going through the stages of disillusionment around how the world's set up, is a really necessary part, I think, of healing. And this is where people go into deeper initiation onto their spiritual path. We have to leave some of the societal conditioning, familial conditioning, modern medicine conditioning, in order to have enough of an open mind or open energy system to receive new information, actually take in. And I say receive, like literally take in, like plants take in sunlight, the thing that's going to help your unique circumstance. But as long as you're ping-ponging within a limited system, a very bound construct that's very dense and very one-centered and very Newtonian, and Newtonian worldview of science is very rational deductionist. So what it does is it objectifies spirit. It takes the spirit out of everything, which is what's needed for deep healing to happen. And there's a physical component that can manifest, and yes, there's physical things we can do to heal, but that without that spiritual component, that all of these ancient cultures and all of these indigenous cultures and all of these systems of healing that date back thousands of years and get results, that is an inherently inclusive part of medicine, of true medicine, of medicine ways of healing. You have to address the spirit, you have to address consciousness. And if you don't, it's you're ping-ponging like inside of this very rigid, uh, very mental construct.
Yeah, I agree fully with that. I really do. It's hard to articulate how to tap into the universal energy and why you're here and what you're doing, and tap into that universal intelligence. But at that, to me, that's the first sort of step. And we talk about freedom of the soul, and with that will come healing and mental empowerment. And so if somebody were to come to you and say, I'm new to this, what would my first steps be in terms of overcoming a physical condition? What would you say?
Yeah, it's, each person has such a nuanced journey to resolving their unique challenge. Like there's not a cookie cutter formula, but what I would say is, we have to first start to address the reality that we're more than just a physical body, because we become so identified with our body or our personality, that it's often the discouragement creates the loop, right? And so I would say, just the willingness to discover new information and the deep desire to feel better, let that intention drive you. And that willingness to discover, that willingness to be like, okay, I don't have all the answers. It's like acceptance, right? The first stage of transformation is awareness. You have to become aware, okay, wow, I have this issue, I have this chronic illness, or I have this emotional trauma, or I have this, unique challenge. What degree of acceptance or refusal to accept am I in, right? And if you can come into a deeper level of acceptance, it doesn't mean that you have to accept that you're going to be that way forever. It just means that you have to come to terms with reality where it is now, not how you want things to be. And then that leads to transformation. So a lot of times we get to awareness and we want to jump right over to transformation without passing through the necessary vestige of acceptance. And with acceptance comes peace. Like I had this transcendental moment in my awakening, right? This is one of many peak spiritual experiences, but that first one, there was a part of me that was accepting, fuck, I can't play basketball anymore. I might not be able to play for years. Who knows? I had to accept. And then the moments of transcendental peace arose from that deep acceptance, which led me to the actual answers that would eventually heal me, And the thing that is really important is the positive mindset, is how we talk to ourselves, and understanding that if you're embarking on a hero's journey of healing your physical body, that this is a journey of self-love. This is a journey of healing emotional trauma. This isn't for the faint of heart. It's not going to go away with a magic pill. It's not going to go away with one sort of treatment. It's there to awaken you out of a type of state of consciousness that's limiting for your soul's experience. And so, so having a belief, creating a belief that it's not only possible to heal and that you can actually eventually thrive again, is a very important mindset to adopt. And it's okay if parts of the personality or the emotions don't want to do that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what you offer to people. And I'm assuming that you can do one-on-one consultations, and you also have some retreats. So talk to us about what goes on at the retreats or with one-on-one consultation.
Yeah, I mean, one-on-one work with people, I'm doing less of and more group, because it's too hard to see everyone. But in a one-on-one space, I'm essentially reading the energy field and getting down to what the core systemic trauma or emotional component is that's giving rise to any of the challenges in life. So we work really deeply with the subconscious and unfreezing the subconscious energy. So in bioenergetics therapy, there's a framework of understanding that we develop different strategies to survive our reality when we're children, and in that stage of development, and our cognitive mind doesn't really turn on until we're between 5 and 7. And so there's a whole bunch of material there from when you're in the womb to when you're 5 that is not mental. It is purely emotional and subtle. And so this usually gives rise to most of the personality challenges, the relational challenges, the fears of abandonment or the victimization or the whatever, it's all stored there in that early stage of development. And so for some people I work with that, other people I'm working more with a lot of other more advanced spiritual tools to sort of awaken someone's higher self, working with their chakra system or nervous system to help them access more of that universal energy, because we need some of that. Like, we need the soul or higher self to help us go into those darker places. It's like my job is to give someone a flashlight if they don't have a flashlight. I can't take away all the darkness in one session, but I can give them some tools to navigate that darkness, and that flashlight leads to a room where you flip a light on, and then that room's there no matter what. And then you can keep going down the hallway. This is an analogy that I would say for around that. So it's nuanced and it's hard to say in some regards. In other ways, I can give a little bit of framework for some of the pieces that I addressed. And in retreats and in workshops, like I said, through that 14-year journey, I've practiced everything from medical qigong to yoga, asana, and very powerful breath work, to systems of detox, to trauma release from EFT to core energetics therapy. So ultimately, talking about things forever is not going to do it. We need to move energy. So what I do is I accompany people in moving the energy for themselves and learning to see where the subconscious resistance is to certain sets of emotions, because we tend to build up a whole powerful castle or wall or very, very nuanced strategies to not feel certain sets of emotions. And so it's really the courage and willingness to go in and access those unfelt feelings and freeing that energy up from the nervous system so more life force can circulate through the entire nervous system. And so spinal health, I mean, there's again, it's holistic. And so there's not a cookie cutter formula that I'm using for people in it. And it depends, I tend to work a lot more with people that have been very down the road of personal development for a while and have more like glass ceiling issues, because I'm really good at getting to the core issue of something. And so, my clients vary in that way, but I haven't been seeing a ton of clients that are working through chronic illness, maybe more addiction, but it depends. And in the workshops, it's every type of person, at varying stages of their development. So there's something for everyone.
Great. And how many people are typically on a retreat together?
It depends if we're doing in person or online. Right now with the whole COVID situation, most of the work I'm doing is online. In person, anywhere from, more of like a VIP, like personal retreat, or with couples or a small team from an organization, like a group of, 4 to 10 people, 12 people. And then in the more public retreats are around 30 people to 75, depending on what's.
And does everybody travel to Bali to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we were not right now. Costa Rica tends to be more where I've done that work. Places like Sedona. Like, I like to go to very spiritually powerful spots where we can go into nature because again, I could talk, but it's about going into the experience. It's about having the emotional, visceral, physical, emotional, spiritual experience. The constructs that I give, the context that I give is just to prepare the nervous system for the transmission of energy that actually happens, because it has to happen on a total systems level for it to, when it becomes irrefutable, when someone's getting chills throughout their body and something like life is telling them, oh, there's something here. When grief arises from a song that's being played, or when you're in nature and the mind just drops away, like those are the kinds of experiences that we can create favorable circumstances for. And there's tools to make those favorable circumstances even more favorable, even more consistent, right? And that entrains the nervous system to the familiarity of, oh, this is what it feels like when I'm engaged with this part of myself, as say an underdeveloped muscle, like the intuition.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we want to give people is the ability to train those muscles of, oh, this is what it feels like when I'm anchored in self-connection. This is what it feels like to actually feel self-love for my own inner child, not as a concept, but like physically, emotionally, energetically in my body.
I,
That's what we want to create.
I have to say to everyone out there, if you've never done an experience like this, and even if you have before and it's time to recharge and to just revisit something like this, I've done, the whole rebirthing, it sounds crazy, but I tapped into the part of consciousness that I had before I was even born. If you can go that far, I mean, I really did, and it unlocked so much about how ready I was to, was I ready for the world? Was it ready for me? These kinds of like huge questions that we have to get in touch with. I even had, a situation with one of my family members where we, did a like whole spiritual surgery situation with John of God. And,
Nice.
it's very, very transformational, and it's, and it's real. And to access parts of your body, parts of your mind that you don't even want to look at, like your, unrealized anger toward whatever it is. You may not even tap into it in your everyday life. You may go through your entire life not even knowing exactly what you're fearful about, guilty about, angry about. So I just want to say for everybody out there, it's hard to articulate exactly what Luke, would cover in these retreats, but it is truly, once you taste it and once you go there, you will never go back. You will never repeat that type of deconstructive, just mentality to yourself. You just won't do that. I mean, you still have work to do, but I just don't find that you would ever go backwards.
There is a red pill, blue pill moment in everyone's life where it's you're all in or you're not, and it's okay. There's no shame. There's no it looks unique for each soul, but I believe that there is, what you're saying is 100% accurate, that there can be a type of experience that awakens enough of the soul or that higher self aspect of our consciousness that there's no going back to who we thought we were. There's no going back to some of the destructive patterns or behaviors, and that's what's scary. That's why a lot of people fear change in the world, even if the change is positive. The familiarity equals a kind of distorted safety for the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And so the willingness to go into the unknown is a very necessary part of healing. It's a fundamental component of healing, because we have to reinvent ourselves in order to resolve really chronic issues.
I definitely agree with you there. And I want to talk a tiny bit about your ebook, because is it just being released now, or do you have several?
I re-released it. I did an edit and update, because I used to have a whole other brand. I had an online mystery school, and my the parts of me were very almost separate. It's like I had an online coaching practice and mystery school, and then I had my art and my music and activism very separate. And now it's all, and I had a spiritual name actually that I let go of after 12 years, and came back to my birth name of Luke. And so my rebrand, you're getting the rebranded ebook.
Getting the new Luke. Wow.
You're getting new and improved.
Cool. What did your, I won't even get into that, but I just want to encourage everybody to check out your website. It's www.lukekohen, KOHEN.com, and on Instagram @Luke Kohen. Would you have any final thoughts for those searching, those that are just tapping into this? Would you have any sort of just final thoughts for them?
Yeah, when it comes to these ideas or concepts of quantum reality or quantum healing, indigenous cultures and ancient cultures have recognized the depth and reality of the invisible world, the unseen world. And when I say that, it doesn't mean just spirit world or like these fantastical, imaginative realms. It's the realms of the subtle, that which we cannot see or perceive with just our eyes. This is also emotions, there's all these things, and that world is very real, and that world has more to do with the manifestation of this physical world than we realize. And so if you can be willing to start to explore this concept of, okay, there's an underlying invisible quantum reality that overlays this one, that can influence this realm. This is how the laws of manifestation work. Laws of we first work with it in the quantum, and then the quantum starts to rearrange the physical reality and brings it into being, right? And so this is advanced spiritual technology that a lot of people learn, and this is actually what a lot of people learn in more secret societies. They learned this form of magic and have kept it from the public, have kept these kind of systems from the public from knowing it, because if enough people are tapped in, turned on, and awake, working with these kinds of spiritual tools, our culture and our society would change. We wouldn't be burning fossil fuels at the same level. We wouldn't just be going through the motions. And so what I'm saying is that there is information out there that is extremely empowering. There is information out there that they don't want you to know, because if enough of us are, like I said, tapped in, the physical universe rearranges itself around you when you're able to work with the quantum field. You become a co-creator. You become a co-creator being with your life. You're working with the laws of life in a way, and you're actively participating in that, as opposed to, life happening to you. There's a threshold we cross to life happening for you. And so this is what I want to plant as a seed for anyone that's struggling out there, that's like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about, but it feels good. There's something there for me to explore. And I'll say it in that terms, when you can get to the point in your life where you're transitioning from this is happening to me versus this is happening for me, you're on the right path. And that is the shift in consciousness that's required for healing to really start to happen, and for you to get those tools and get those systems, get access to these technologies that they don't want humanity to have, because it truly works. It actually transforms us into a very empowered, in charge of our behavior state of being.
I love that. I love it. I just think this is really going to speak to a lot of people who just don't know how to take that next step. And really, it's a huge leap of faith in the beginning. Yeah. I think you just have to just say to yourself, okay, whatever system I'm in right now is not working. I've tried it. I've given it hell. And, and I'm ready to just sort of experience something new, and I know that it works because I see many, many people out there just experiencing total peace about themselves, and they've gotten there. So I think it's going to help a lot of people take that next step. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
You're so welcome. There's one final little thing that's coming through. It said, in order for miracles to happen, you have to believe that miracles are possible.
Yeah.
That's where it starts.
It's a pretty good one to just think about for a second, and to just really ask yourself, do I believe in miracles? And if in fact you can say yes to that question, then you're ready for a big one in your life right now. So,
and if you don't, that's okay, and you can work towards doing what you need to do to create a receptivity to that being a possibility.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome,
appreciate all that you do, and hopefully you'll come back on and talk to us some more.
Yeah, we'll see what life has in store for us. I'm certainly open to that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, bye.